Mhm.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm on today with RJ Downard, as per usual, and today we're on with Joe, and they're going to talk about stuff and things. And so, to begin, I'm going to let Joe introduce himself and ask the first question or post first comment, whatever he wants. So, go ahead.
Sure. I'm Joe Lillie, and I live in Baton Rouge. And I met Jackson on the LSU uh, campus about I think about a year ago, and I was there doing evangelism and doing a flat Earth presentation. And he stopped and talked to me. And just to back up a little bit, I'm a Christian. I've been a Christian for 7 years. So I have a Christian uh, world perspective and outlook on things. The Bible is my authority that I live by, and I am going to be here to proclaim that the Bible teaches that the Earth is flat, stationary, and immovable. Um, and I, I talked with Jackson on several different topics. We didn't just speak about the flat Earth. We spoke about evolution and some other things. I'm a little underprepared this evening. I've been working long hours, so I really don't have a whole lot of new material, and I don't have things lined out here for me. So I'm going to be going a lot off of memory. I have the Bible here, and I I wish I could have been more prepared for this. I want to give the viewers, my best evidence that I have. So just bear with me if I'm having to look at some things and I'm not getting the answers out quick enough. I know a lot of things that RJ is going to be talking about are most probably going to be things and topics that I haven't heard of before, but we'll see what happens and see where this goes.
Okay, so are there any uh, points that you want to bring up that you think uh, do argue conclusively for a flat Earth?
Uh, Yeah, but uh, I mean, are we going to do what's the format are we going to do? We're just going to do
Oh,
questions,
it's just a back
answers.
and forth between you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I believe from my research about 3.5 years ago, when I came across the first time that I heard that the Earth was flat, uh, was about 3.5 years ago. So I've researched it over the last 3.5 years, on and off. Uh, and my first question to you, RJ, is when was the first time you've heard of the topic that the Earth is flat?
In the research on old 19th century creationism, it popped up. Flat earthers had been around for periodically. So it'd be in the 70s and 80s that I begun hearing a bit more about it. It was still being pushed slightly in the church in the fourth century, but by that time it was painfully obvious that the earth was a sphere, and Greek science had figured this out. And so the church pretty much accommodated that idea. And it remained a non-subject down into the 18th and 19th century, when occasionally you would have small groups of people who would be putting out small announcements, and they were never backed up by the sciences, because, of course, to believe in the flat Earth from the couple thousand years old on, you'd have to get rid of all the evidence that it isn't flat. And no flat earther has been able to do that. So that's why we're sticking with the reality that it's a sphere, independent of what the religion argument said. So you would have to deal not only with the science, but you'd have to deal with creationism, because not even Kent Hovind or answers in Genesis accept a flat Earth, or geocentric Earth for that matter.
Okay, fair enough. Um, well, I mean this debate, I guess you could call it. It's going to be a debate. I'm going to have a Christian perspective, and I'm going to present to you some scriptures. You mentioned Genesis, uh, and actually, there's over 200 Bible verses that support a flat, stationary, immovable Earth, and I believe uh, from our senses, and well, just use water. Let's start out with water. You know, water is the most uh, is the best evidence for a flat Earth. I mean, we really don't have to research it too much to know that, and we know that science proves that water always finds its level, regardless if it's in a cup, if it's in your sink, if it's in a puddle, if it's on a lake, if it is in a river, an ocean, that it always finds its level. And even in a level, when they're, when we're trying to find a flat surface, and you might use a level to find level, water is used in the level. So, on what is the science behind round Earth believing that uh, uh, round Earth? What's the science that
Well,
can prove that water can form to a convex
you can
to a
measure
sphere?
it. You
I don't
can,
think
you
there
can
is,
take a
right?
you can take a really large lake that's miles across and physically measure the curvature of the Earth on it. It's been done. Haven't you spotted any of that?
No, I haven't, and that's a good point. What is the equation for the curvature of the Earth?
Well, it's basic trigonometry that you can do. Have you read much about Aristarchus? Because he was able to figure out the curvature of the Earth without even bothering, or Eratosthenes, without ever even bothering with water. He was able to do it just by the gnomon observations and shadows. Are you familiar with that data?
No, no, I'm not.
What sources do you rely on, Joe, for your information?
Now I've heard of What's his name? Aristostes.
Yeah, he's the Greek who figured out how big the Earth was 2,500 years ago. And so this is
Using
not exactly a news bulletin.
using shadows, you're saying?
Yeah, don't you know that you could tell that on the equinox that there was a spot where there was a gnomon that had zero shadow on the equinox at the same time that a gnomon had a shadow on exactly the same moment in a city that was hundreds of miles away. And all you needed to know was how far away they are, and you had a slave walk it to measure it, the good old days when you could do that. And trigonometry told you could work out the calculation, and then he was pretty damned accurate. He got the size of the Earth down to fairly close to 30,000 miles round on the circumference. And that was 2,500 years ago. And of course, we're way beyond that now. Are you honestly telling me that you have literally never encountered any of that evidence? I would assume that then you're only reading flat Earth sites so that you never bump into this stuff. They ignore it for you.
And no, I've heard references to it. I've heard a lot of different things, but you still RJ, uh, you didn't really answer about the water finding its level.
You do know that gravitation causes things to gravitate. And the point is that you can physically take a lake, you can set a sight line up. I've seen it done with a laser beam. You put a boat right to the shore, put a stick up on it, point where the laser is pointing. So that's an absolutely fixed line, which will be straight. Take the boat and start going out into the lake. And as you go out into the very long lake, it drops lower and lower and lower, which means the laser is hitting higher and higher and higher on the post. Eventually you reach a stage where the laser is attenuating and you're very, very far out and the boat's about ready to disappear below the horizon. Then you can switch to another mode, which is using a telescope. So you set up your sight line with your telescope, and they used a helicopter miles away so that you could see where the helicopter was. And as it goes farther out, following along by depth exactly over the water, it drops below the horizon again. And to rise up to where now it becomes visible in the telescope, they're 50 feet off of the ground. If you measure those amounts, run it through the mathematical formulas that standard trigonometry, you can calculate very accurately the curvature of the Earth. Are you unaware of such information? Have you ever thought to do it yourself?
Yeah, that's interesting because, well, I'm very aware of the information and the tests that have been done by flat earthers and people that are actually trying to debunk the flat Earth. They're taking P900 cameras, Nikon P900, Nikon 1000s now, and they're standing on the shore and they're pulling into sight a ship and they're videoing it go out to sea, 10, 12 miles, and what it appears to disappear over a curvature. But when they zoom in on it, they can always pull the boat back to where it's level, perfectly level.
Have you confirmed those are accurate or relevant experiments?
Even as far as 20 plus miles out. And with the
is way smaller than 20 miles to do the experiments that I've seen done.
So you're saying that the curvature, so what are you saying? That the curvature is too far, that the Earth's too big to see the curvature from a shoreline?
They're using cameras that are a foible. If somebody else, SciStrike, can talk about the camera aspects at some point. You'll probably want to discuss with somebody that's a photographer. It's always the P900 camera. I'm saying, how do you explain Eratosthenes' measurement of the Earth with the shadows?
Okay, I don't need to explain Eratosthenes' experiments from however many hundreds of years ago that he was doing these experiments, when today we have technology that's far above and beyond that which he was using. The antique or the ancient methods that they were using with shadows and whatnot, that we have today with the technology that's far more advanced, that we can see ships that are supposedly disappearing over the horizon, and we can just
any of those videos were correct.
You don't have to be a scientist to do these experiments yourself, and to have degrees in trigonometry and whatnot. You can just go buy a P900 and debunk a lot of these supposed curvatures.
Does that make the shadows go away? Are you telling me that anybody today cannot physically measure the shadows on any spot on Earth during an equinox and verify that the shadows you form from a straight object that's perpendicular will be exactly what we expect on the curved Earth? Are you claiming that you can't do that?
Yes, I'm claiming you can't do that because the shadows aren't accurate.
Another question I really wanted to ask is, have you been to the edge of the Earth?
Have I been to the edge of the Earth? No.
Has anybody you know ever been to the edge of the Earth?
Personally, no. I've seen, the information's out there, the videos are out there. So basically, you can research these things. It's all at our fingertips now with the internet. I mean, this is making it a level on the internet. This is making it a level playing field for all of us. We don't have to rely upon these great philosophical, theological, mathematical minds that were doing experiments hundreds of years ago, when we can have people that are doing their own experiments.
Yes. Have any of these people been to the edge of the Earth? Any of these experimenters?
I believe yes. I believe they've been to the ice walls.
Ooh, and you have selfies of these people at the ice walls?
Well, we got video. All you have to do is look it up. Just like you might look up stuff on.
I've never seen it. Do put a link up to the alleged pictures of the ice wall and how they determined that it was an ice wall. Can you name any of these people for us?
I don't know their names right off firsthand. No, I mean, it's out there. Just have to look it up. It's out there, RJ.
RJ, you're breaking up pretty badly when you talk.
Nobody has ever been to the ice wall because the ice wall doesn't exist. So I do hope you put a source up for everybody to follow of what you think is somebody who you claim to have been to this alleged ice wall.
Well, now, okay, have you been to the ice wall?
Because there isn't an ice wall. I can't be there. I can't visit Mordor either.
If you've never been to the ice wall, how can you say it doesn't exist?
Because we know the shape of the Earth. We know the maps of the Earth. We've known this for centuries. We have people in satellites. We can see space. We can see that the Earth is a sphere. We can see the way the solar system is worked out. We know that gravity and Einsteinian relativity are working. And I can't forget that all that thousands of years of science doesn't exist because you have seen some cockamamie stuff on the internet that you've never attempted to fact check.
Oh, I fact checked it. Yeah,
How do you fact check? How do you fact check? Take an example of something you fact check. Tell us how you fact check.
I've checked the sources.
How do you check the source on somebody? Let's say you've seen a video where somebody goes to the ice wall, allegedly, and I want you to put that link up. Please give us that link when you do the comments and stuff on it. Make sure Jackson puts a link up. Okay. And how did you go about fact checking that was really, really, really the ice wall? How did you verify that?
Okay, well, just give me one moment here. Bear with me.
Okay.
I'm going to look something up real quick. I want to read something to you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Fact checking is, while he's looking that up, I will point out that source methods, the ability to source check and verify and look at all the data field and account for all the data field successfully is something which Flat Earth has manifestly never been able to pull off, which is why it's been a strange little niche market that's so peculiar that you can't even get Kent Hovind to think it's a good idea.
Well, yeah, Kent Hovind, he is, but, you know, interesting that Kent Hovind did admit that there is not one Bible verse that teaches heliocentrism.
Well, I'll agree with you. The Bible, the Bible in the Old Testament, the pre-modern worldview that reflected in the Old Testament is flat Earth geocentric. Problem is, the Earth isn't flat. It's not the center of the universe. Geocentrism is wrong. That's why the Genesis version of the Bible is pseudoscience. It's incorrect in the same way that the Mahabharata in the Hindu culture is incorrect, and all these other old mythological structures of cosmology. They're completely useless and wrong. The universe doesn't look like that.
Okay, so what you said the Bible is pseudoscience, but actually the Bible warns against pseudoscience and science falsely so-called.
Well, it can warn whatever it likes. Now, back to the fact-checking. What did you look up, and what are we talking about here?
I was looking for a verse in Job.
That's going to be relevant for data? That's irrelevant. That's just a magic book saying. That doesn't tell us anything.
Well, no, it does. It actually. So, all right. Well, let's try to get on some common ground.
How would you?
What is your?
Let me again repeat. When you've seen a video on Flat Earth that asserts that they have visited the ice wall, what mechanism did you go through to fact check that any of that actually took place or was accurate?
Well, you know, actually, the video was basically reliable source enough. It showed not just one video, but many videos and images of ships at the ice wall, 200 to 300 foot ice walls, where the ships were at the edge of the ice wall. And
how did you know they were at the ice wall? How did you confirm they were taken at this ice wall as opposed to against a block of ice in Antarctica?
Okay, well, we believe that there is an ice ring that surrounds.
Yeah, we know that.
All the continent and holds the water in it. And there is a firmament, invisible glass dome.
Not the question I asked.
And that we've never been into outer space.
Not the question I asked.
That satellites do not exist.
Not the question I asked.
These sources that you're saying are reliable for you, as you said, we have satellites, we have pictures.
No, well, we can discuss that too. But I'm talking about the ice wall. I put it to you, sir. Nobody has ever been to the ice wall because there isn't one. that any sources that you think are pictures of the ice wall are merely blocks of things that we can see in the physical world that are not in this alleged ice wall, and that if you fact check those sources, you'll not be able to pin down that they are actually from this alleged ice wall. So when you say you have source checked, how do you source check a claim on a video that you have seen online? How do you go about checking that it's any more accurate than somebody that would put up a picture of a unicorn that they would see online? How do you fact check that?
Well, if the Bible confirms it, see this is what I do, RJ, RG or RJ, RJ, is that information that I investigate. When I investigated this, and I was coming across videos about the flat Earth, it didn't take me long to know that it was true. But what I did is I cross-referenced it with what the Bible teaches.
So that's your source checking?
Is that the videos and the information that's out there is in line with what the Bible teaches. So actually, the Bible is my primary source. Mm-hmm. All these other videos and information that's being put out, it just confirms what the Bible says.
Okay, then since I would contend that in fact you have not shown any indication that you've ever fact-checked directly any of these claims about the ice wall. You've simply said that because it matches up with what you want the Bible to believe, that therefore it's true. So let's go to space, because from my point of view, since I'm old enough to remember before the space age came along, that you are effectively saying that every person who has ever been in space and has been involved in the rockets launched into space is a liar, right?
Well, do you trust your government, RJ?
I'll trust Buzz Aldrin over you.
Now, do you trust your government? Do you believe your government will lie to you?
Don't get off onto paranoia land. Are you claiming that all the people, astronauts, cosmonauts from the U.S., the old Soviet Union, the current Russia, China, Japan, India, all the various nations that have sent people up to the International Space Station and have sent probes and are using the satellite system that we're using now for what we're doing now, that every single one of those people has been spreading a falsehood lie, but that your videos that claim they are all absolutely correct, and that you are absolutely certain that all of those people are lying, but not your videos?
So you're saying that it'd be preposterous to think that many people could be in on a lie that big? Is that what you're saying?
Conspiracies never work like that. Have you studied conspiracies?
Okay, well, that's an interesting. Yeah, you bring that up. Let me read something to you.
Are you claiming, let me be clear, you claim that every American astronaut, including the one that from Spokane, Washington, where I lived, who died on one of the space shuttle explosions, that every single foreign astronaut, every single one of them, to a man and woman, is a liar when they claim they have been into space? Yes or no?
Yes, I'm saying that they are lying. Every astronaut is a liar.
Mm-hmm. Are you willing to say that to their face?
Yes, I am. Have you ever seen the video?
And do so, because I think that's one of the most scurrilous and preposterous notions. What makes you so convinced that we've never been into space?
Why do the heathens rage and conspire? I'm pulling up. Have you ever seen the video Astronauts Gone Wild?
Have you ever have you fact-checked any of the claims made by the flat earthers on these?
Well, hold on. There's a video out called Astronauts Gone Wild by Bart Sabril. And I encourage people, look, RJ, I have Christian friends that have disfellowshipped with me and won't talk to me any longer because of my belief in the flat earth. So
because it's silly.
You're not a Christian, I assume, correct?
No, but I'll tell you, the vast majority of Christians on this planet do not believe as you do, for the perfect reason that they aren't silly.
But RJ, let me tell you, a lot more are believing this, and this is a movement that is growing in I mean, very rapidly, and it's, I mean, I guess you probably know. You probably know now that there are many, many people that are, saying that the Earth is flat. But let me get back to your other question.
Saying goes, if 1,000 people believe a silly thing, it is still a silly thing.
Well, and if 1,000 people, believe a lie, then it's still a lie. I mean, if one person believes the truth.
Do you know of any flat earther ever who has made an ephemeris system to allow for the prediction of eclipses based on a flat Earth model?
Now, the eclipses, you've lost me there. I haven't really researched.
I don't know why because there's
eclipses. Yeah, I don't
accommodate actual observations of astronomy, not once zero.
RJ, there's a lot of breaking up on your end. It's kind of hard to hear you sometimes. You'll have to repeat
I'm sorry.
that.
This is the best I can do. I'm running off my battery.
I understand.
Montessori class.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this, RJ. What do you believe? I mean, what do you know that flat earthers believe that the cosmology of the Earth is? I mean, do you know what we believe?
Well, that the models that are typically put up on flat Earth videos are the one with the North Pole at the center and a great big ice wall around the edge, which is just a foible of projections. If you want, you could take literally any point on Earth and make the same projection and decide that any spot on Earth that's at the far end is the big wall, and it would all be equally wrong. The problem is that you have to come up with ad hoc explanations for why the astronomical observations are the way they are, why you can't see the pole star Polaris in the southern hemisphere, why you can't see the Southern Cross in the northern hemisphere, why you can't predict any astronomical phenomena, why you can't explain why the solar spectra, the spectrum of distant stars, the parallax of stars, the motions of the planets, the way that the planets are in terms of Venus's phases, or any of these phenomena, that no a geocentric flat Earth model can account for this other than just the most absurd ad hoc bits. Now, if at some point you can come up and explain why Newton and Einstein and gravitational metrics, as well as accounting for why astronauts are all liars, all of this becomes so much data, so much history, so much physical science that can be replicatable, that you just don't pay any attention to it. Not because it isn't there, but because your worldview is constructed apparently just on stuff you've seen online.
Okay, well, I mean, and then I could say your worldview is constructed on things you've read in books. I mean,
yeah, well, I've read a lot more books than you have, and apparently I fact-checked information in a way you don't have. So when I happen to know people who have actually been into space, and I am to believe that their experience is a complete fake, whereas you who watch videos online know way more than they do.
Okay, let me just, RJ, let me just read something to you, and it addresses what you just said a minute ago about astronauts and governments and the Russia space program and the people from, the leaders from all over the world. What did you say again were you just talking about astronauts or world leaders as well?
Read your statement and let's hear.
Okay, it says, why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves against the kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. And then it says, he that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh, the Lord shall have them in derision. So when you said it's preposterous to think that the leaders and the people, the leaders of the world could come together to conspire such a thing and to have such a conspiracy to fool people and to lie, if we go to Psalm 2, verses 1 through 4, it speaks exactly of that. It
Well,
warns. It
excuse me. Your text from Psalms.
Let me finish. Let me just finish that. I want to just wrap it up. Just give me 30 more seconds. So the Bible is the true word of God, and this is what
Incorrect. That's everything.
this is our Christian worldview, and that explains exactly why they would. Because if they can attack the biblical cosmology of how God created the earth, truly created the earth, flat, stationary, immovable, with a glass dome on top, with a localized sun and moon that's rotating above us in a figure eight pattern that gives the seasons in the longer summers, longer winters, that if they hide that from people and say, no, we're on a round ball spinning in outer space with infinite.
How big is the sun, Joe?
Universe, that it goes against what the Bible teaches. So I'm just here to say that the Bible says the earth's flat, not what scientists are saying.
How big is the sun, Joe?
Oh, the sun's, it's not very big.
Not very. How big is not very?
I'd say it's about 5 miles in the sky, and it's about 30 miles wide.
And how did you determine that?
Well, it's interesting because just like you can determine it, RJ, is that if you really want to do some unbiased research.
Can you be a little more specific on that? About all you're doing is saying non-specific. How was it determined? And are you claiming all flat earthers agree that the sun is 5 miles high and how big?
Roughly 5-7 miles high. And I say that because there's video now of planes flying over the sun, taking
and you
pictures.
Determined that was accurate. How?
Because it's in line with what the Bible says.
But not because you've determined that it is accurate. Okay. Out of curiosity, which version of the Bible are you drawing on?
KJV, King James.
Okay. And you normally speak 17th century English?
No, not normally.
Yeah, well, the language has changed quite a bit since then. And plus, of course, the King James Version actually tinkered with a lot of the translations, which you might have dealt with. And of course, there is also the King James is a Protestant Bible. There's also Catholic Bibles. There's also Orthodox Bible and Coptic Bible. So yours is only one of the many versions of interpretations of one of the various versions of the Bible and not the only one. Maybe since we're never going to be able to resolve the flat earth question here, I'm kind of curious about what your views are on evolution and on what basis you do so.
Well, hold on. Let's just say let me ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
Why? Well, here's an interesting point. Why would take level? What's the definition of level?
You've been around the level point. I'm asserting to you. This is a fundamental issue. Water seeks the level, and because of gravity, it curves on a curving surface, and we can physically measure it. You don't allow those measurements to be real. I'm telling you that there are such measurements. We ain't going to resolve that in this video. So let's move on to another subject.
What's the definition of plane?
That's yet again, we are never going to resolve these issues because you're never going to fact check your material, and I'm not going to pretend that the information I know doesn't exist. So let's move on to another subject. And I'm curious to see what other views you have on other things other than just simply repeating the same talking points over and over again.
Okay, well, a plane is a flat surface on which a straight line joining any 2 points on it would wholly lie from one point to another.
Yeah, and that's not going to resolve this question between us.
Horizon, horizontal. What shape is the horizon? I mean, horizon is
these talking points off of the videos that you see, Joe?
No, I was just looking up the definition of plane to read.
Yeah, I know what I was a math major in college. I know about planes. I know about calculus. I know about transform. Let's do a mathematics question.
Why are we using flat terms to describe a curve? Sea level, airplane, sea level.
Because they're really short distances. things look
horizontal. It's a
Guys,
flat
hold
line.
on. You can't both talk over each other.
Okay. We look at the horizon. See, a horizon is a flat line. So why are we using flat terms and definitions to describe a curve? Can you answer that, RJ?
Well, because people tend to use flat measurements. You use a yardstick. You could theoretically measure things with a curved yardstick if you felt like it, if you use the mathematics to be able to relate to it. But it's not terribly practical to do. We tend to build relatively flat objects where we make flat floors, although shipbuilders know about curves, because if you go to visit the Queen Mary and get on that promenade deck, you can see the curvature of what seemed to be a flat deck easily in that. I don't use that to prove the curvature of the earth, but it shows that people deal with curves and flats, and we have mathematics to deal with both of them. It does not make your argument correct, nor will it make Buzz Aldrin a liar, depending upon what measurement stick you decide to use or whether you go with meters or cubits.
So that the earth is measured with a line, right? Not a curve. When do you take measurements with a curve? So you're saying that Eratosthenes used shadows to measure curves?
Let me ask an empirical question of you. Have you read anything about Greek science directly, or is your understanding of the sciences derived from just videos you've seen on this?
Well, you know, I'm not a scholar, so yes, most of
Become one. It's 2018, Joe.
Right.
Joe, can I ask, have you ever taken any higher maths like calculus or trigonometry or calc 2, something like that?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay.
More details on things.
Sorry,
then I suppose if we go to transfinite mathematics, that could be somewhat troublesome. Do you know, just for a fun bit, did you know that some infinities are bigger than others, Joe?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. Study Cantor, and just to give you the short form, the natural numbers are a countable infinity. The real numbers, which include all the irrational numbers, are an uncountable infinity. And when we check you into the Hilbert Hotel, we'll make sure there's a nice mint on your pillow. So anyway, I don't think we're ever going to be resolving the flat Earth issue here because we're talking about a very incommensurate frame. But I am curious about your views on evolution.
Well, I mean, the flat Earth, I can test with my senses, with my sight, with my, you know, we can see that with our senses, RJ. I mean, I know that the Earth's not spinning at 1,000 miles an hour because what's that?
How do you know the Earth is not spinning? Well, at 1,000 miles an hour, you'd have to be on the equator. I'm up in Spokane, Washington, so the Earth is not moving that fast here. And if you're up at the North Pole, it ain't moving at all. Hello.
That's Rich. That's my friend Rich. He just came in.
That's right.
What's your view on the flat Earth, Rich?
Hello.
I'm just here for a little amusement. You guys continue to argue.
Go ahead, RJ.
Yeah, are you aware of how Galileo demonstrated inertia?
No, I'm not.
You might want to catch up on that. That's only 400 or 500 years ago. You've got a lot of science to catch up on, Joe.
No, that's not really, because that really doesn't prove your point about.
Oh, yes, it does. An object in motion tends to stay in motion unless acted upon by a directed force. That would be one of Newton's laws. Are you saying all of Newton's mechanics are wrong too?
Well, I'm saying there is no gravity, so the Earth cannot be spinning at 1,000 miles an hour without
gravity. Determine that, oh great Nobel scientist.
Gravity is a theory that you can't prove gravity.
Oh yes, it can. We can measure it.
We're measured. No.
Just as we can measure relativity.
What's that?
Joe,
we can measure relativity and gravity.
Joe, are you saying it's not true because it's a theory?
Well, I'm just saying gravity is, it's not true. It's
because it's a theory?
Well, the flushing sound you're hearing is most of the science disappearing down.
Hold on, RJ. Hold on a sec. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I'm saying that gravity, it can't be proven. That I'm saying that it's weight, density, and matter. So,
where did you get this idea?
When someone says something's a theory,
no gravity.
Joe, when someone calls something a theory, do you think that means that it's not necessarily true,
No.
or at least it's not a good. So if I were to tell you that cell theory, atomic theory, that these are also theories, there is no atomic law, there is no cell law.
Well, what's your definition of atomic law?
No, that what the point is, these things don't exist. So
You,
a theory
let's
is the highest.
think matter is made of atoms.
So the
Yeah. Okay. Well, no. Go ahead. I see what you're saying. No,
is a
I
body
believe there's
of.
theories that are true. So yeah. Okay. But I
So
don't
just
believe.
because it's a theory that
Yeah.
right, there are. So a theory in science is the highest that an idea can come to. This is the highest point in science. It has been tested with very rigorous observations and experiments, and that's when something becomes a theory, like cells. Like cell theory says we are made of cells. Atomic theory says everything is made of atoms. At least all matter is made of atoms.
Well, because we can observe atoms in cells through microscopes.
Right, but that's
we
why they're
measure
theories.
too.
Right. Okay.
I'll
All right.
shut up
Maybe I
again.
said that wrong, but yeah, I recant that. But no, I don't believe in gravity.
And how did you not have you studied how Newton worked out gravitational theory?
No.
So you are convinced that something you have never bothered to study is wrong.
Yeah, no, I've heard that. Yeah.
Let me ask you, if somebody were to try to argue Christianity with you and they never bothered to read the Bible and didn't know who Jesus was, would you find they were very persuasive?
No.
Then why do you think that you can claim that gravitation is invalid when you have never bothered to study even Newton?
Well, that's easy. It's the same thing I said earlier, is that you don't, you're going off things that you've researched and learned from people that were doing experiments 400 or 500 years ago. And now we have technology. And
are you claiming that those science work has been
to do our own experiments with, like I said earlier, the P900 that debunks a lot of the experiments that you were talking about from people from 400 or 500 years ago. So we've advanced and evolved in technology since then. So I don't really need to study Newton or Eratosthenes or some of these
Aristophanes.
These other occultists.
They are not occultists. It is very false witness to call them occultists, Joe.
Our biblical, our how the worldview is, So, but if you want to talk evolution, sure, let's talk about evolution. Can you explain to me how something can come from nothing?
Oh, that's not evolution. You're talking origins or bust. Let's talk something a little bit more recent, the reptile-mammal transition.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know nothing about that, so maybe we shouldn't talk.
Let me ask then, is it correct to say that you have never read a book of science on the evolution issue in your life?
I don't need to, RJ.
No, that isn't what I asked you, whether you needed to. Are you, you will acknowledge that you have never bothered to read any science works on this, right?
Well, I mean, I was indoctrinated just like everybody else in the school system about evolution from, I'd say, first grade into high school. So we were all taught about evolution and evolution of origins, but also, I've studied a little bit of macroevolution, microevolution, a little bit of Darwin, but so I mean, I've never read whole books on the matter. No.
Yeah. Your jaw and ear are a beautiful illustration of macroevolution. Did you know that?
I've heard that.
Yeah. You know what? You know that the mammal jaw in its adult form has a single dentary bone, right?
Okay.
That's the one that has your teeth in it. If you've seen a good old jaw skull, you got the thing with the coronoid process sticking up and your standard classic skeleton that you see in Halloween. That's very basic of mammal. But in our embryos, we start out with all of the old reptile jaws, and the articulation is not on the squamosal bone up in the skull that we end up with as an adult mammal. Instead, it's the articular quadrate that's the old reptile one. And that dentary bone expands and expands and expands in our embryo. This has been known since the 1830s, by the way. It's not a news bulletin, and no creationist ever discusses it. And when that dentary bone connects up with the squamosal, the articular quadrate bones are pulled up into the middle ear, and we use them to hear with. We have the fossil bones of the transition of that occurring in the fossil record, including a double-jawed form that was literally predicted in advance in 1912 by Robert Broom. So if you believe that animals in the past were designed, you would have to accept and you would have to believe that the designer deliberately went out of their way to gratuitously design perfect match fossils for evolution that exactly match the prediction of an evolutionist. I don't think a God would be that perverse.
I mean, the mathematic probability that the DNA strands could come together in it's.
That's
I
origins
mean,
or
have you
bust again.
studied
It
out the
doesn't
math
matter.
on all these things you're talking about? Like how can something evolve without a stomach? Or how can a
makes you think?
how can a lip work
Get a
without
question out here. How old do you think the Earth is?
evolution? It's ridiculous to think that we evolved from. I mean,
How
and
old do
look,
you think the Earth is?
I say this with all respect because I know that this is something that Jackson and you yourself have spent many years studying and researching.
Do you know why we spent years studying and researching it?
Well, because you have an interest in it, I assume, obviously.
Okay, but do you know how that interest translates into applicability?
Okay.
Our belief this belief in evolution actually has practical applicability. We can use the model of evolution that we have developed from all these different lines of research to actually apply it in the medical field, as well as making predictions such as what RJ said in other fields. If evolution weren't true, for instance, then we wouldn't need to get flu vaccines regularly because these things are evolving through antigenic shift and drift. And so with these, and also we can track infections across the world using principles of evolution, and we can show where they originated, trace them all the way back to their source. So it's not just this belief that hangs up here and it's all neat to think about. It's something that actually helps us in a day-to-day life. It helps keep us alive in a lot of ways.
Yeah. How old do you think the Earth is and life on it, Joe?
Oh, roughly 6,000 to 7,000 years.
How did you determine that?
What's that?
And how did you determine that?
Because that's what the Bible says, that mankind was created, that the earth was created. It says in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void. So you can track back the genealogy from the 6 billion people that live on the earth today, all the way back to the flood, and from the flood back to the beginning.
Ooh, when was that flood?
Roughly so they say 6,000 to 10,000 years. That
and how do you on that flood in the population mix? When was the flood?
When was the flood?
When was the flood?
Well, the flood account happened in, I believe, Genesis 5.
No, but what year was it in?
I couldn't tell you that.
You don't even know that. Okay. To start out with, then there were 8 people getting off the ark, right? Oh, Noah and his wife and the kids, right? And the wives, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And they started breeding. How long would it take them to get to the point where they could have built the pyramids? And when were the pyramids built?
Well, that's interesting that you said that. I mean, what do you believe the pyramids were?
Ooh, the pyramids were built as tombs, and they were built at the same time the flood was supposedly happening about 2,300 years ago. And somehow or other, the Egyptians didn't notice. Isn't that odd?
Well, yeah, I don't believe that the pyramids were tombs, actually.
Oh, so and what do you think they were?
I believe they were industrial plants, basically to make power, wireless energy.
Holy moly, that's ancient astronauts, Eric von Däniken stuff. Not that it surprises me that you would swallow that silly idea, but may I put may I ask you, have you ever read any actual Egyptology works?
No, I haven't, RJ.
Okay, there's
No.
another. Newton, Einstein, Eratosthenes, Galileo, the last 500 years of recent science, the history of evolution, the history of paleontology, the history of genetics, the actual material on Egyptology. I will toss in the culture of all cultures on the planet, the last several hundred years of actual archaeology, not on your scope because you haven't seen it on the little videos that you've been looking at. Hi, Rich.
How you doing? Sounds like you read fiction.
Rich,
I enjoy it as well.
did you hear what Rich said, RJ? He said, it sounds like you've been reading a lot of fiction.
Oh no, I actually I write fiction, but I read science. At the moment, I've had about 25,000 technical papers in my data field in my Troubles in Paradise project, and so I delight in the fact that in 2018, everybody, including you, Joe, has potentially access to all the genuine science information, and all you can do is twaddle up on this stuff on videos that you've been getting. Oh, that's sad.
Wow.
You are in a glut of genius work. We are in the most advanced science age that's ever been on the planet, and it's open to everybody, and your mind is starving to death in this tiny little world you've constructed from videos.
Well, no, it's more than that, RJ. But let's try to keep it on
Yeah, back
track.
to the age of the earth.
I wanted to look up, but go ahead, keep talking. I want to try to find something here.
Can I ask
Yeah,
you, Joe,
about
what are
the-
your thoughts on the applicability of evolution belief, for instance? If it's not true, why is it that it's applicable in the real world?
Well, I don't. I mean, you're saying that they use evolution in modern medicine, and
Yes, natural selection and biogeographic distribution. Those are evolutionary principles.
Yeah.
So why is it?
I don't believe that. I mean,
You don't
you're
believe
saying
what?
that
You don't believe what specifically?
Evolutions.
So
I don't believe evolution.
Right, no, I understand you don't believe in evolution,
not
but
real,
why is it?
So I would say, that whatever studies that you, I don't know where you're getting your sources from. That
I
people
mean, NCBI,
evolution,
PLOS,
National Academy of Sciences, science, nature, genetics,
cell
journal of.
biology.
I've got about 9 technical journals under my data field. It would be boring to read them all off.
So, Joe, my question is then, if evolution isn't true, I understand you believe evolution isn't true. I get that. But if it's not true, why is it that it's applicable in the real world for these specific things? Why is it applicable if it's not true?
Okay. Well, you're saying, well, I mean, what is your proof though that you're saying that evolution?
Researchers can track the specific mutations in specific lineages of viruses and bacteria. They can trace them not only through the lineages, but also across the planet to the place where these things originated. That's how. You can track Ebola back to. Do what?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
You can track, for instance, Ebola to 2 separate outbreaks. You can track lots of different diseases.
You can actually trace the point mutations and the dynamics of the biological systems that have caused the bacteria to become resistant. And if you don't use evolution in working out how those alleles are going to be shifting under selection pressure, it's literally life and death between people. Another area that where creationism clearly fails is oil. No fossil fuel company on Earth uses creationist flood geology. Zero. Because if they did, they would lose money, because only by using real geology, where they really can figure out where oil deposits are and really figure out where coal will be, based on real geology, where they know the real chronology of the earth. This is why creationism is economically and philosophically and scientifically useless. And that's why it's provided no useful information in the last 150 years.
Well, RJ, I disagree.
Not because you've studied it.
Yeah.
But so I'm still interested. I'm still interested in my question. Why is it that we can apply this if it's not true? Why is it we can apply evolution if it's not true?
Well, you're saying that you can apply it. I don't. I mean, you're saying about mutations that they're finding and tracing back
Mhm.
from all the way across the world.
That's precisely how evolution works. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I
Are we
mean,
talking about macro or micro? Okay, big
Oh
difference.
well, microevolution piled up over a long time. The reptile mammal transition took 100 million years. The bird development took about 100 million years. And that's vertebrate classes. Those are the two vertebrate classes to have appeared in the last quarter of a billion years. So it's slow, but all
well,
of those are
well,
composed
see, that.
of speciation and mutations.
Okay,
Go ahead.
RJ, that brings me back to the point, and these were questions that I was asking Jackson when we talked on the campus,
What? Which
and
ones?
he avoided them very skillfully.
What questions?
The definition of science is able to observe, test, repeat.
Would you call
And
would you call being able to repeatedly track the development of mutations through specific lineages of bacteria across the planet? Would you say that's repeatedly testable and observable?
I am. What I'm saying is that RJ said 100 million years ago uh, that no one was there
So do you
to
know what's
observe.
meant by observation and
That's
experimentation?
You have to be there to observe it. You can't observe
Do you
what
know
happened
what's
100 million years ago if you weren't there 100 million
well,
years
Joe?
ago.
Do you know what's meant by observation? Joe, do you know what's meant by observation when we say observation in science?
Well, you're observing something now
You can
that
observe
I
data,
don't
right?
know.
You can observe the remain.
Data.
If for instance, if let's say there's someone came upon a crime scene, right? Someone's been shot. We can figure
Right.
out, even if nobody saw the crime actually happen, there are no video cameras, no witnesses. The only person who could have
Right.
seen is now dead on the floor. They have a bullet, gunshot wound. If we were to go with your idea, we would just let the killer go. We have data we can look at. We can look at the DNA we find at the crime scene. We can look at their shoe size.
Blood
Perhaps
spatters.
we can
Yeah.
their credit card history. We can look at all sorts of things. If we were to just say, well, no one was there, we can't do anything. Go home. Every killer would get away. Every thief would get away. They just have to make sure they left no witnesses.
Well, let's not
Yeah.
forget paleogenomics.
What's that?
Have you ever heard of the term paleogenomics?
Never. No.
Probably because you only read creationist literature. Paleogenomics is the field. It's been going on now for 20 years of where they are retro-engineering the evolutionary process. They started out primarily with protein coding genes and worked back where they would literally be able to reconstruct the ancestral form of a common ancestor for a particular protein and test it out in the organisms to find out how those properties had changed over time. Now they're proceeding to the cis-regulatory level above the protein codings to where they're able to retro-engineer how the bird frame shift occurred to convert the digit structure of the dinosaur into birds, how the bird beak originated from the Archosaurian dinosaur skull snout. That they're going more and more on literally recreating things. 100 million years worth of mammal teeth have been retro-engineered through understanding what mutation shifts have occurred in a couple genes regarding the formation of teeth. So we're reaching the stage where, yes, we can literally experiment. No creationist has ever been able to pull that argument off. They've never been able to work out what their created kinds are. They're not able to work out consistently how any of these kinds are structured in terms of both the Noah's Ark bottleneck and the Adam and Eve bottleneck with the observed fossil record. No creationist has been able to account for the full fossil record and the current genes. They can't even explain why we have the ALUs in our genome. Can you?
Well, how do you know this, RJ?
Because I read the thousands of science papers that you admit you never bothered to even try to look for.
Well, who wrote these science papers?
The scientists who do work, and now you're saying that all science is to be flushed down the toilet too. Apparently everybody, you will discover that if world were built on the basis of your ignorance, the electric lights that you have, the telephones that you're using, the video cameras that we're using, the satellite GPS systems that make use of relativity theory, the chips that are in the computer that came about because we understand how quantum physics work, every bit of that would be flushed down the toilet because we would be living back in the dark ages in a time when they thought the earth was flat.
Well, the earth is flat. And basically, all you need is water to prove the Earth is flat.
And I
Water
tell you,
always
all you
finds its
need is
level.
water.
It never can be observed.
Yes, it
Uh,
can,
no,
and has been.
you've never seen the curve.
Yes, we can.
No, you have amateur rocket scientists sending rockets up, taking the fisheye lens out of these cameras that they're sending up there, and when they get miles high, the horizon continues to
And where did you get
rise.
this information, Joe?
It's flat as far as the
Where
eye
did you
can.
get this information, Joe?
I watched it. I watched it on
And
videos.
how did
There's
you check
tons
that
and
that
tons of videos. So are
then
you saying that all these videos out there are photoshops and they're not legitimate?
they're
That would be
usually
wouldn't
they're
that be a
usually patched together.
wouldn't that
They're
be a
patched.
giant conspiracy to think that all the
No,
videos
no.
are fake?
Let me tell you, what you have is a daisy chain of ignorance. You have a small coterie of people who make claims, they make the video, they cherry pick their information, and then other people like you repeat it and maybe make a new video where you repeat the argument and you build these daisy chains of ignorance. No giant conspiracy is involved. If you gathered all the flat earthers into the planet together in a room, there are probably about the same number of flat earthers as a proportion of the population as there were in 1850. We just have a bigger population. So we would expect to be more people. Just as there are people who think the Holocaust didn't happen, or that Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare's plays, or that
We also have a question
vaccines
from the
don't work.
audience.
There's always a small number of people that believe all sorts of things that are very peculiar. But I will put it to you that if you fact check the material, let me ask a straight question to you. Have you ever watched videos critical of flat Earth and tried to compare up the data fields on those?
No.
Will you ever do that?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Then by
I
all
also-
means do so.
I also have a question from the audience, Joe. They want to know if you think Bush did 9/11, or are you not a 9/11 truther? They want to know that.
Oh, well, I'm not going to say Bush did 9/11. I believe
Or a
that
government conspiracy at the very least.
I don't believe the narrative that was presented to the American people about
That it was
9/11.
terrorists from the Middle East.
No, I don't believe that. No.
Okay.
And
there
why
you
do you
people, you
not
have your
believe
answer.
that? Based on what?
Well, basically, you could use the science to determine if jet fuel could melt steel that doesn't that you know it jet fuel does not melt steel at the temperature that it
There's
burns
your
at.
flaw.
So
There's your flaw. What makes you think what makes you think the jet fuel has to melt the steel?
what does it have to do?
It only needs to soften it. What's the temperature needed to soften the steel?
What is the temperature to soften the steel?
It's way below the melting point. For the same reason that when you drive a forklift, no temperature involved, that if you raise the forklift and try to lift beyond its regular weight, you can bend that steel in such a way that you can snap those steel just by lifting a tiny weight because you've exceeded the load limit. It only takes a small amount of heat, not the melting point, to lower the temperature to the point where a 50-story building will not rest on it. And that's what was happening in the World Trade Center towers. It's no coincidence that the planes that hit lower on the one tower, even though they hit afterwards, that tower collapsed first because the weight it had to bear was way bigger than the other one where the plane hit higher, and it reached the stress level quicker because the temperature didn't have to get up as high that far down because it had so much weight going on it. Have you read any of the studies done by the commissions that looked into 9/11 on the dynamics of the weight collapse and the like with the towers?
Well, yeah, that's interesting you say that because the buildings collapsed from the top to the bottom. It wasn't.
No, they collapsed at the point where the airplanes hit.
That's right. So,
Did you?
I mean,
I ask again the question: have you studied any of that technical literature?
Controlled demolition experts that are saying that those buildings fell because of thermite and
And
controlled
how reliable are these alleged experts? Did you fact check their
with the
reliability?
videos showing the windows blow out off every floor before each floor collapsed.
And you
It
got
was
this from where?
impossible for building 7 scientifically and physically
And you
impossible.
got this from where?
Physics can that a building 7 could implode on itself from
And you got this from where?
uh, from the internet.
Okay. And have you read any criticisms of those and or any of the actual technical studies that were done by the engineers after 9/11?
Yes, I've seen both arguments on that. Yeah, I have.
Okay. And how did you compare? So you had heard before the charge that this claim about the need to melt the steel was fallacious. You had heard that before, right?
Right. No, I watched
How did you determine that that criticism was not valid?
because of the testimony from experts and from
Who?
video showing the melting points of steel and
No. The melting point is irrelevant. What expert have you got that claims that a building can be supported by steel that has been heated but not yet melted, that a 50, 60, 70-story structure can rest on that? Are you claiming physically that steel can do that?
oh yeah, I believe it can. Sure.
They've conducted experiments on this. Again, have you ever bothered to look at any of that work?
Yeah, I actually have. That's what brought me to the flat Earth was research into 9/11.
Be sure to put your links up on that so we can all follow up on that, Joe.
I sure will.
If you send me your links via email, I can put all of them in the description afterwards, Joe.
Yeah, we want everybody in this video feed to be able to follow up.
I already put
on the forces.
I put Astronauts Gone Wild in the side chat for people to look at. So that one's already been up there for a while.
Yeah,
when you guys...
appreciate that, Jackson. That's okay. Astronauts Gone Wild, and also a funny thing happened on the way to the moon.
A funny thing happened on the way to the moon. Okay, I'll put that one.
How do you account for the constituency of lunar rocks, Joe?
Well, the moon is a light. I don't believe that the moon is a solid object, so I don't believe. I believe that lunar rocks are bogus. There are no lunar rocks.
And who allegedly came up with these rocks, and why do they have the constituents? Why would they make the rocks so completely different from what everyone was expecting the rocks to look like? Have you studied the history of selenology?
Where are you getting your facts from? Where are you fact checking all this information that you're presenting?
Written by the scientists over the last 50 years.
Okay. Well, do you believe it'd be possible for, okay, well, do you have like a source that you can give us?
Well, I'm on my cell phone here, so I don't have my technical literature available, but I suppose you have to Google the rock there.
Are you going to put these articles up as well?
Oh yeah, when I get back to my computer, I won't be there until after Christmas. So, well, or Jackson, you may be free to plug some information in on that as well. You have an astronomy department at LSU?
Yeah. There's one.
Hit them up for some of the evidence on the lunar rocks. They should be able to provide that.
When I took physics, my professor just said some people think the Earth is flat, laughed, and said, "All right, moving on." That was his only.
Real quick, give me 30 seconds.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So now I've put a funny thing happened on the way to the moon. For anyone who wants to see it, it's in the side chat.
I can see who's in the live chat there. Any familiar names and stuff over there I can say hi to?
Yeah, we got Beej, we got Brooke, we have Psystrike.
Hi, Brooke.
Bed hair. Oh, by the way, the audience wants me to ask him also when he gets back about Bigfoot and other crypto.
Bigfoot. Yeah.
We want to ask. The audience wants to ask if you think Bigfoot exists.
Oh, we got a jokester in the audience.
What about the Loch Ness Monster?
I guess that's a legitimate question. Some people do believe in Bigfoot. No, I wouldn't say I would go along. Did I say that I believe in Bigfoot? No, I wouldn't go along with.
What about the Loch Ness Monster?
Sightings. Now, Rich has actually posted a video about a guy that's eaten Bigfoot. I don't. Was that?
Yeah, I think Bigfoot's real.
Yeah, I think it was a.
We're hitting the trifecta on the bingo card, gang.
So actually, I don't believe in Bigfoot. Rich does believe in Bigfoot.
Okay, fair enough. That was just the audience wanted to know. Have you read about like cryptozoology, that kind of stuff, like Loch Ness monster, Mokele Mbembe, that Mothman, that sort of thing?
Have
you read about
heard of those things? I haven't really researched the Loch Ness monster.
I actually had a creationist guy who was a cryptozoologist come on my channel a while back. He was an interesting guy to talk to.
Yeah,
he believes
there are a lot of sea creatures. I think that there's a lot of sea creatures that we still haven't seen, and it might be hidden deep in the water somewhere. But
we also have another question from the audience. Brooke says, "Did you know Building 7 was an uncontrolled burn for several hours?"
As an uncontrolled burn for several hours? No, that's new to me. I mean, no, I didn't know that. I don't believe that.
We don't believe. Wait a minute. Why don't you?
Your sources that you trust on your videos don't discuss it for you, and therefore it's not on your data field?
Well, so you trust everything the government puts out? You don't believe that your government would lie to you?
A variety of sources. Do you trust? Let me put it this way: do you trust nothing at all?
Do you believe everything you're told?
No, let God be true, but every man a liar. So yeah, I believe there's an evil agenda.
Most Christians do not accept that the earth is flat. Or how were you going to tell them that they're wrong?
Well, there's an evil agenda in the world that is there is a conspiracy, like I read to you earlier in Psalms 2. Why did the heathens rage and the kings of the earth and the rulers against the Lord anointed, break their bands
guys,
asunder?
hold on, don't talk over each other.
But yeah, I believe that there is a conspiracy to control and deceive the masses, and that they will use whatever means necessary. If the earth's flat, then they'll say it's round. If God created us in 6 days, that they'll say that we evolved in 6 billion years. That this agenda and this plan that is being perpetrated by these occultists that are in power, that are receiving things.
Name some of the occultists in power.
Oh, well, you mentioned the Bushes earlier. We have Skull and Bones.
Is Donald Trump an occultist?
Skull and Bones. We have the Freemasons. These are secret societies that take secret oaths.
Is Donald Trump an occultist?
Illuminati. There you go. Illuminati.
Is Donald Trump an occultist?
Knights of Malta. Knights of Columbus. These are people that
Joe, what about Donald Trump?
That are Luciferians. They openly worship.
Is Donald Trump, the president of the United States, an occultist or not?
Well, he's professing to be a Christian. That I don't know. I'm not going to say he's not one. I'm not going to say he is one. I don't know. But the Bible does tell me to pray for those that are in charge. So I pray for these people. I'm sure.
So Joe, can I ask you?
Let me just say this. I believe anyone. Okay. I believe anyone on the world stage is a part. If they're on the world stage, they're a part of the secret.
Was George Washington an occultist?
He was a Freemason.
Well, that's Joe, wouldn't you say we're all part of the conspiracy then, since the internet has made all of this world stage? Anyone can, literally anyone can see this video. Wouldn't you say we're all on the world stage?
No, I believe that the internet has made it a level playing field for us, and now for the common people. And
would you say that that RJ and I are part of the conspiracy, the conspirators?
No, I wouldn't say that. No, I'd say you're going along with it unknowingly. I'm not saying you're part of it.
So can I ask? I want to ask my question again from earlier, because I never heard an answer from it. If evolution isn't true, why is it applicable?
if evolution isn't true, why is it applicable?
Yes, why
Why
can we
does it work
use it
so
to
well?
study populations of organisms such as bacteria and viruses and track these things across the world using principles of evolution? Why is this possible if evolution isn't true?
Okay.
And we're talking about micro or macro, and you're talking about something that's separate from what Joe's talking about in its essence.
Oh, I'm happy to talk
No,
about
it's
both
not. No,
micro and macro.
no,
Rich.
it's really not. What I'm asking, actually, because, well, for one thing, we'd have to explain what the definitions of both micro and macro evolution are. But my question is, why are these principles, which are fundamentally evolutionary principles, able to be used to or in the real world? Why are they applicable?
Well, Jackson, that's, you asked me a lot of these questions, and I
I
appreciate,
just have one question. I just have one.
and I appreciate, that that you have an interest in education and learning, and and to you know try to figure things out and try to solve things uh, by reasoning.
Yeah.
And and come on, Rich, let's let's keep it cordial here. Uh, so. But that's why I was trying to present to you like I did on the campus. And like I want to present some things to RJ. I know we've laid some groundwork here, and I mean, I've a lot of things I'm saying may seem elementary. You guys have studied these things. You read tons and tons of books. I only read one book, and that's the Bible. Um, so, but you haven't answered my question,
Which is,
and that is you deflected it since the first time that we talked, and that is basically how can something come from nothing?
that's
And
not
then,
evolution, and
but
we neither of us claim to know the answer to that. We never claim to know the answer to that.
but okay, you don't claim to know the answer. So I
No,
mean, you
neither of
say
us
you
do.
believe in evolution.
I didn't say I believed it.
Well, RJ was talking about accounts from hundreds of millions of years ago, so that
That's
just
way
That's not about okay.
that
So the
implied that he
idea of something
believes
coming
in
from
evolution.
so no. Evolution is change in allele frequency in a population over generations. This is fundamentally a biological subject. The entirety of the universe coming from whatever, whether it was nothing or God snapping his fingers, whether either of those occurred, that has no effect on evolution, because evolution is not about cosmology. It's not about physics. It's not about chemistry in a direct sense. Evolution is only about biology. So if we're talking about, so it's not even about,
No, I
yes,
mean
evolution's only about, yes, the theory of evolution by natural selection and sexual selection, gene flow, genetic drift. This
yeah.
is solely only a biological phenomenon. It
It's
has nothing to do
creating
with the origin of the universe.
that it is an origins or bust issue.
Well,
That in
let me ask you
you
this:
have to have life originating naturally. Well, I don't require life to originate naturally. Maybe life originated by a godly Zot 4 billion years ago. Delightful. From that point on, however, we can clearly see the evolutionary evidence. And I know,
Right.
because I probably read way more creationism literature than you do, Joe, that the vast majority of that technical information and that factual knowledge is not discussed in the anti-evolution literature. They suppress 90% of it easily. So they leave all the data points off of the field and try to present the idea that evolution hasn't occurred. The reptile mammal transition that I mentioned, that data does not change depending on how life originated. Now, you believe everything is way shorter, so you're talking about only 6,000 years old. But unfortunately, we have a huge amount of science evidence that shows that can't possibly be true. And again, I suspect you have never bothered to look at any of that geological data. This is not a new subject. This is a couple hundred years worth of science here, long before radiometric dating and all of that, which only confirmed what we had already discovered, done, by the way, by devout Christians. Adam Sedgwick would be pissed off at the idea that he would not, that his findings would be dismissed by some 21st century flat earthers when he had worked so diligently as a religious Christian man to show how the geologic system functioned back in 1800.
It's the Jezebel spirit.
Okay, so why? All right, I know we're kind of in, we're we're moving from flat Earth to evolution, but not evolution origins, only evolution. Microevolution is the evolution between species, correct? Macroevolution is the evolution over geology
It's
and
So
above species level.
macroevolution is defined as change at or above the level of species.
Yeah, young Earth creationists require really fast speciation. They, in fact, require big chunks of what is called macroevolution in their current dogmas. If you read modern baraminology literature, and do you read modern baraminology literature, Joe?
So let me ask you this:
Well, Joe, do you read
believe that?
baraminology stuff?
No, I haven't. I haven't
So do you
read
know what
that.
baraminology is?
Say it again.
So
Baraminology.
baraminology. So
Yeah.
basically, a baramin is the created kind, the kinds God created at the beginning. So what baraminologists do, they're young Earth creationists, and they're trying to figure out what groups did God create at the beginning, and how many were there. What animals are their descendants today? What organisms are their descendants today? That's what baraminologists attempt to work out.
Okay.
What
Well,
kinds are on the
I
ark,
believe
things like that.
Right. Well, okay. All right. I didn't know that, so I appreciate that.
You
Let
should
me just
read
ask you this.
more. It's fun.
Do you believe that the human species right now is and will evolve into a higher form of a human species?
Oh,
There's no such thing as higher.
thing.
Or
That's
do
a
you believe
meaning
that
of
we're
term style.
continually evolving? If you believe we evolved from,
Are we evolving? Yes, we can actually show in specific in certain examples that we are evolving, and I can give you an example if you want.
I'd like to hear that.
Okay, so in Italy, there's a city called Milan, and there's a family in there that had a specific point mutation, and it was in this protein called apolipoprotein A1. So what this protein does is it helps it helps metabolize cholesterol. So this family had a mutation in this protein that allows them to metabolize higher levels of cholesterol, meaning that they are at a reduced risk of heart disease. So this one mutation allows them to both metabolize more cholesterol and have a less chance of heart disease. And this has been studied.
Okay.
It turned out the first guy with this mutation was in was it 1800s, I think, something like that. But yeah, they tracked it all the way back to all the way back to when it first originated. It's fascinating work.
I believe one account of that is not proof of human evolution.
Well, I can actually give you another one.
Well, I mean, the human body is a miraculous machine. It's, it heals itself. The cells regenerate.
But this isn't about healing. This is about a specific mutation that other populations of people don't have. That's only in this one lineage of people. This is a novel mutation that occurred in this one family. This isn't about healing. This is about a mutation that occurred in someone's germline cells.
So say that mankind's still around 10,000 years from now. What do you envision the human body and the human being?
Oh, we have no idea. And actually, 10,000 years is really short.
Able to fly and. I mean, are you? Is that what you see?
Flight is unlikely in humans. So if we're
one day we could actually grow wings and we'll just.
Oh no, 10,000 years from now is relatively short. We probably won't look a whole lot differently than we do today, because you can actually look at human fossils from 10,000 years ago and before. Humans actually go back about 300,000 years. And so
let me bring up that. You can use actually the evolution of birds. If you look at any of the slices of time represented in the fossil record from before Archaeopteryx 150 million years ago through to the late Cretaceous into the dinosaur extinction in 65 million years ago, and then on for another 10 or 15 million years as you see more and more bird modern families proliferate, and looked at each one of those time slices in 10,000 year increments, you're going to see nothing but microevolutionary shifts, exactly what you would see in populations today. It's only over the long course of time, in the same way that if you sit down in front of a glacier and watch it moving, you're going to be really bored. It's like sitting outside in your house and watching a tree grow. No, it's really, really slow, and evolutionary processes are far slower than that. The odds of any substantial change taking place in human beings over 10,000 years is absolutely trivial. We couldn't predict in advance what things could happen, but we can tell some things. There's no going to be a fifth and sixth wing forms sprouting out of any organism, because vertebrates don't do that. They are constrained by their homeobox genes and a lot of other structures to prevent that. Whether or not some dim and distant descendant of us 100 million years from now might look very, very different, especially if we spread out to other planets, you can't tell. But we can track backwards through our own species.
Can you give me the definition of dividiscent?
What?
The dividiscent, what does that mean?
I think you misheard him. I don't think that's. I think you misheard him.
Yeah, because I didn't.
Descendant is what he said.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Heard as.
There's a lot of lagging. There's like some lagging in roboting, so some words might get a little bit slurred together. But I think
my bad, because I'm on my stupid cell phone. So blame the air quotes smartphone.
But yeah. So if you look at macroevolution, which is genetic change at or above the level of species, it's really not. It's not really anything super special or surprising. In fact, we have observed it. It is observable in certain cases and very short. In organisms with short lifespans, like mosquitoes, fruit flies, cichlid fish, things like that, you can actually observe speciation occurring. Right? Actually, it's been observed. It was recently observed in a crawfish that underwent a whole genome duplication, so it became a new species. So
how much of the fossil record of the hominids, which are human beings, through into the Australopithecines and into the other hominids prior to that? So, in other words, representing the last 10 million years or so. How much of that have you studied, Joe?
None, RJ.
So if you have no data on your field, how can you be so sure we don't have evidence for human evolution?
Well, I know that there isn't any. There's the missing link has never been discovered.
What do you mean by missing link?
That information. You just have never bothered to look.
So, for instance, if I were to tell you that we have a number of successive species, we also have genes from relatively recent ones like Neanderthals and Denisovans, but we have fossils from Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Homo floresiensis. We have fossils from the earlier Australopithecines, which are an entire group that we are descended from. We have fossils from yet earlier hominins like Sahelanthropus, Ardipithecus, Orerin, and we can also connect up with the genetics and see how these guys relate to others. I actually did a whole video on it where I go through different characters in these different ancestors and show them what characters they share with us as well as with other apes.
Okay, you just kind of broke up at the very end there.
I'm sorry. I did a video where I show characters that these fossils share both with us as well as with other apes.
Yeah, be sure to give him the link on that one, Jackson.
Oh yeah, I can put that in the description for anybody who wants it.
Yeah. I really can't answer that.
What if I tell you I've seen some of the fossils myself because I actually worked in the Department of Mammalogy when I was at LSU Baton Rouge?
Well, Jackson, since we last talked, what are some of the things that you've researched? And I think I pointed you in some directions.
On what?
Did you ever watch any of the? I think I was maybe The Biggest Lie Ever Told. A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. Did you watch any?
I put A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon in the side chat, so anybody can see if they want.
You guys, it seems like you're just kind of in a box with what you study, and you really don't go outside of that box.
We're actually not. So you see, RJ and I are actually doing a project right now where we're literally reading 4 books written by young Earth creationists, by Answers in Genesis, the new Answers books. We're going through all 4 of them and critiquing chapter by chapter, paragraph by paragraph, line by line. And we've already done that for a number of chapters, and we plan on hitting a whole lot more. And so we're literally writing a book looking at what the other side says. And I have a number of other books on apologetics in my closet. One of the my first book on apologetics. I was early high school. It was from 1967. Did man get here by evolution or by creation? I was not convinced by that. Not convinced by any other creationist works I've read so far, and I've read quite a few of them at this point. Not as many as RJ, but I've read quite a bit.
I've only read about 9,000.
Yeah, so not quite that many.
That's a lot. That's a lot, RJ. That's impressive.
Yeah, I've been at this now since I really started getting involved in this in the early 1980s when the young Earth creationists were flexing their muscles trying to get their equal time laws through. And that, of course, slammed into the Supreme Court. That's when I really started to investigate evolution in earnest. I wasn't really an evolutionist into that period. And when I found out all of the data that I didn't know about, and started to study things. The dinosaur revolution was taking place when they were really revving up dinosaur paleontology in the 1980s, and I found out about that. And then I found out about the reptile-mammal transition and realized that there was all this data out there that was being suppressed in the anti-evolution literature. And so if anybody is relying exclusively on anti-evolution literature for their arguments, or flat Earth, or geocentrist arguments, that they are skewing their data set by only paying attention to the people that say what they want to be true and that matches up with the dogma that they want to be true. Now, the specific videos you mentioned, I can't remember by the title, but I've been watching Strike show Flat Earth stuff on his show for weeks and weeks and weeks. And most of our shows are about Flat Earth videos. And it's the same arguments being made by the flat earther over and over and over again. The same pictures, the same P900s, the same claims about fake things and about supposedly using magnetic fields to suspend astronauts or filming them underwater or doing all sorts of claptrappy things. And it's terrible analysis. And what is never, ever presented in not a single flat earth video that I've seen so far, and you can tell me if you've ever seen one of these, none that has ever explained physically in detail how big the sun is, how big the earth is, how big the moon is, how far away they are away, what experiments were used to determine this, how you can test that out with actual observations that would be matched up, how our observations with all the physical things that can be accounted for. Never have they accounted for that. Nobody, they wave around claims about atmospheric distortion or perspective, but the fact of the matter is, astronomically, it is physically impossible to make a star map ephemeris, an eclipse prediction system based on flat Earth. And that's why no flat earther has ever presented such a thing. If they want to try, and if they want to show why Eratosthenes' experiments didn't work, why the experiments that we can do on physical lakes work, and then go on to point out how this alleged hyper-conspiracy of everybody in the sciences since 1600 has been on this. I don't think NASA was playing a role in explaining to Galileo what he was seeing out of his telescope in 1600.
No, yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, you said a lot there. Yeah, I don't believe either that everybody's in on it. I believe a lot of people, the content and the information that they learn from people, they believe what they're being taught, and they pass it along. Is they, you know, they believe the lie and they pass the lie along. Just
remember
like,
how I said I've actually seen some of the fossils? Like, are the fossils themselves a lie?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not gonna. When you say the fossils, yeah, I believe you've seen fossils, but
I mean,
I
I've
believe
literally
that
worked with people who study evolution on a daily basis. Do you think they're just making this up as they go along?
Yeah, I believe that they're running with a narrative that they believe in.
So,
and
remember how I said earlier that evolution is applicable? That's not just a narrative, I believe it, which was my point. It's not just a matter of saying evolution happens, I believe it. That's one thing. It's that we can actually apply evolutionary principles and get results. That was the point I was making earlier.
Well, let me read to you real quick, Jackson, of I believe what is happening when people that are studying out these matters.
Another Bible quote: "Do not waste our time with a Bible quote, because that is not information, that is dogma."
No, this is information.
Joe, these diseases that are being traced across the world are actually like actors or
you're
fake.
using your books, RJ.
Nothing in the Bible makes the
I'm
reptile
not
mammal
telling you not to use
transition
your
data
book.
go away. Nothing in the Bible makes the astronauts into liars. Nothing in the Bible makes the geological system go away. Nothing in the Bible makes the fact that no geology company, oil company on earth has ever used young earth creationism for their model. No Bible quote will make the fact that the ALUs in your genome are retrotransposons. No Bible quote will ever explain why there are mitochondria in your cells and why they came about by an endosymbiotic fusion. No Bible quote will ever make any of that information go away, and apparently no Bible quote will ever get you to read any of the science data on it.
Well, let me read this to you. It's Colossians 2:8. It says, beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Christ. So that's a warning for believers to beware
You
of men
should
that
heed that
spoil
yourself,
you.
sir.
You know what spoil means is to ruin you through philosophy and vain deceit. In 2 Timothy, it says to do not science falsely so called. Look that up.
Do you know what that's actually a reference to? That's not the science that we know today. There's actually a whole. There's a lot of
Jackson. I believe there's good
discussion on that.
I believe there's good science. I don't believe it's all pseudo.
No, it's not about science. In that case, when science is used in that context, it's not about what we call science. That's not the science they're referring to. That's
Joe,
not what they're referring to.
Good scientist.
I'm sorry. What'd you say, RJ?
What would be a name of a good scientist in your view today, Joe? Name one that you think is a good scientist.
I don't know their names. I don't study their names. Martin Feldman.
I don't know that one.
You don't know that one?
What's his discipline?
Martin Feldman.
He's actually a professor at your college. Electrical engineering.
Feldman. United States. He's an electrical engineer.
Yeah, he's got over 30 patents.
Somebody came along, said that electricity doesn't exist, that it's actually Snoggleflob, and that he
is. I found it.
That insists that the electric industry is a fraud and it's actually Snoggleflobianism. And he got it off some videos and had never read any electronics, never done any electrical work, never done anything at all, just had relied on these videos. Would you find that kind of an argument very persuasive against a Feldman?
Well, no.
So he's exactly what you're doing with flat Earth and your anti-evolutionism. You are relying on an incredibly limited data field of a small number of people that say things you clearly want to be true based on your understanding of the Bible, even though the vast majority of Christians now and in the past have never believed what you do.
Well, I would agree with that there's a lot of Christians that don't believe the Earth's flat. Yeah, that's a true statement.
About 400 AD.
So, it's getting very close to Strike's movie night.
And I'm down to about 56% on my battery here.
Okay, so we are going to close down the stream. It's getting kind of late where I am. We've been on this for over an hour now, and it's getting close.
Close to
I don't
2
think
hours. Time flies when you're having fun. And look, I really enjoyed this, Jackson. I know we didn't really make any headway there more than we did last time.
Oh, that's okay. I think the audience saw everything they needed to see.
Yeah, and we were both polite and friendly.
Yes, exactly. That's the point.
I think it's a useful discussion.
And I would like to do this again. And what the links you put up, I'm going to research it a little more. I was way underprepared to really look at your channel and see what you've been talking about lately. I did look at it after our first encounter.
Right.
I've been working 60 hours a week.
No, it's perfectly understandable. I understand. Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, it's fine. You don't worry about it. The videos aren't going anywhere. So it's all good.
That's good. All right, my friend. Well, RJ, it's nice to meet you.
And say hi to Rich. Say bye to Rich.
All right. Rich says bye as well, and my wife says bye.
Bye.
And
thank you for coming on again. Thank you, everybody in the live stream, for watching. And I'm going to end the broadcast. So bye, everybody.